Hi, I'm Morris Maduro. You're getting this because you and I are both in the Black Executive Network, and this is something that I sent to my direct connections on LinkedIn. And most of my connections are have some interest in personal development, possibly neuroscience. Some of them are coaches, et cetera. And so I'm doing roundtable conversations with them to explore this just so they could level up their own process for helping people with transformation. But I'm sending it to you because we're all having to do more with less, and we've got a lot of volatility going on, VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And I think that this approach may be useful for somebody in your team. If you have somebody who's promoted and maybe they're not quite stepping in, or maybe you have people who are spending a lot of time in fight or flight or maybe stressed, this might resonate. So let's take a look. I'm going to condense a 90-minute conversation down into about 3 minutes. So it's going to go fast. So what I've done is two things. One is the 7 performance series: mental, physical, spiritual, emotional is in the middle, and then relationship, professional, financial. Now, the mental, physical, spiritual is in our control, 100%, right? The relationship, professional, and financial requires involvement with other people, some kind of collaboration. If we're selling, we need a buyer. If we're buying, we need somebody to sell who's selling it. If we're leading, we need a follower. If we're, so there's some involvement of other people over here with the relationship, professional, financial. So that's out of our control, but we've got to be managing ourselves in such a way that we have a high probability of getting our outcome. Now, notice the emotional is in the middle, because when you leave it to just chance, this emotional is probably on this side over here, out of your control, because it's easy to be hijacked. And once you're hijacked and triggered, it's very difficult to get that back on track. Anxiety spirals, etc. What we want is the emotional to be fully in the part that we control: mental, physical, spiritual, emotional. So we run laps around that to get the identity leveled up to the point where the person is ready for their next quest. And to do that, we use the 7-step reset process. So we have this 33,000 decisions a day, and that's what the foundation or why this exists. Now, those 33,000 decisions, if you think a minute, you'll recognize, okay, we're awake 65,000 seconds or so per day. That's a decision every other second. Those can't be conscious decisions. You're right. 95% of our behavior is by habit. So let's say roughly 1,500 of those are actually conscious decisions. We're making 30,000 plus stimulus response cycles all out of habit. And this is why we can keep doing the same thing over and over and over. As a business owner or leader, you know that you're seeing repeated behaviors. You can predict what people are going to do because they're continuing to run the same pattern over and over. So I have the stimulus here. On the left side of the stimulus, I have steps 1 and 2. That's the pre-stimulus phase. And then on the right side, I have steps 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And that's the stimulus response side. This is in our control. This is in our control. Of course, the stimulus is out of our control. We can influence it, but we're never going to be able to control it completely. There's always a left field for something to come from. So here's what we do. Step 1, we look at the beliefs, the neuroplasticity, our ability to use deep practice to create the habits that we want and remove the ones we don't. Priming, so we're priming ourselves, not being primed by others. Mindset, so not only do we have a growth mindset, but we get back to a growth mindset instantaneously. We're knocked off, and get to the point where you don't get knocked off anymore into a fixed mindset. People can have a growth mindset, and then one little thing can trigger them into a fix. We don't want to have that. Take that off the table. And then the last one is physiology. So each of these can impact the others, and each one can be a weak link. So we have to get that step 1 in place first. And then we do step 2, which is our state. So this is, we're walking around in some kind of a state every day: mental, physical, spiritual, and then we have the self-image. And while self-image is not truly a state, it does impact our state of being, which is going to have an effect on what happens when we get to that stimulus. Now, the stimulus is out of our control. We don't know what's going to happen. Whatever happens, we want to know that we can handle it. We're ready. We're equipped. And you have a process, and that's what this right side is about. So the first thing that happens within a quarter of a second, well before the conscious mind comes online, a quarter of a second, the network of neurons, aka subconscious, is already processing, because it processes at 11 million bits per second. It's already reacting to this stimulus. So we want to condition in a different set of instructions here. So the same way the reticular activating system gets on high alert for things that it believes are important to you because you set a goal, we can put it on high alert. So it assesses the stimulus in a different way. The other thing we'll do is condition in at that reaction level the handoff to the conscious mind. We don't want to just get the reaction from the subconscious. We want to get an assessment so that we're already ahead of the game. It's processing 11 million bits per second compared to the conscious mind's processing of only 50 bits per second. So why not take advantage of that speed and have it do some assessment? First step of problem solving is clearly define the problem. So we can have the subconscious, we can have that reaction give us some kind of an assessment, right? And then the conscious mind has a head start. The next one is E, for emotional modulation. If you're going to be triggered, if this thing is bigger than a little bit and it's kind of throwing you off your center a little, you may want to pause and come back in a few minutes. Tell the person, let me think about this and get back to you. Let's meet in 10 minutes or what have you. The point is, we need about 90 seconds to get the emotional modulation in place and back to an even keel. We don't want to be taking action, which is the sixth step, A, when we're triggered. And then the last one, M, is mindfulness. We want to get back to a mindfulness state. So we're back here to pre-stimulus, ready for that next stimulus to come. And this is how we keep leveling up, because we're constantly improving our state of being, which puts us in a better position to deal with the stimulus that hit us no matter what. So you notice this spells scream, because left to its own, by the time the day is half over, we want to maybe scream thousands of times already. So we're going to shift that by controlling what we can control, so that the stimulus is no longer a stimulus, it's just life. And when life happens, we already know what to do. And that's how it puts our dream within our reach, because that life that we want to design requires us to be in charge of our present moments. And that's what this process does. So if that's interesting to you, you can dig in a little bit deeper. If you're interested, you can join a roundtable. You can come in with some of my connections. We'll kind of mix that group up, as well as maybe some coaches and business owners and leaders. Or if you are a business owner, I have a podcast, Transformation After 50, which gets into a lot of this work, but focused on people after 50. If your business serves that community and you want to do some kind of content on that podcast, we can certainly have you highlight your business, and I can ask you some questions about it and then present it to my audience. But we'll co-own the content, the recording, so that you can use it and make it clips, because that's what I would do. I'd make it into clips and then use it for content. Right. If that's interesting to you, like I said, just send me a message and we'll go from there. Take care. Thanks.